All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Head in the Clouds from Go Cloud Careers. My name is Chris Johnson, joined by Mike Gibbs and Alonzo Coleman, and we are here to talk about tech interview preparation, part two. So hopefully you joined us last week and got to hear from us on part one. But yeah, so we are back again. We're going to be talking about tech interview training and how to get hired in a tech recession. A lot of people are predicting, and arguably we're already there, a recession, and in particular, tech recession. As you see every day, the tech jobs recession and layoffs and everything from all the different companies around the world. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about tech interview training and tech and tech interview courses, tech interview programs. We're going to be talking about everything that you need to know to make sure that your interview is successful. So, if you're looking for tech interview preparation tips, that's what we're going to be talking about. Make sure you take some notes. So, there you go. You're a little slow on the mute button there, Mike.
Working on it.
All right. Well, there we go. Welcome to live TV, everybody. It's amazing. Always amazing. Let us know where you're from in the chat box. We always like to know where everybody is from. We see we got Tyrone working with us over there in the chat box. He is from Cape Town, South Africa. Looks like we got Khadijah in Maryland. Another Tyrone in London. Got Freeman in Charlotte, North Carolina. Got Kevin in Sydney, Australia. Owason in Sydney as well. Mark is in Florida. Alonzo, of course, is in Katy. Steve is in Canada. Pernell is in Atlanta. So, yeah, glad to see everybody here again. Let us know where you're from. Hit that like button too. But before we get started, before I let Mike and Alonzo get their words in, I want to make sure to let everybody know of a few things. In case you didn't get it already, make sure to get your copy of our interview guide. It's free for you. Make sure to get that. The link for that is in the description, and the link for that will also be in the chat box. Tyrone will be posting that over there for you in just a moment. Make sure to get that free resource to go right alongside with everything we're going to be sharing with you today to get your feet wet in the interview preparation. Next thing, this Friday, we are going to be having a webinar about the secrets to winning the interview. So in case you don't get enough from us tonight, and you don't get enough of us from the interview guide that you're going to get by going to the link in the chat box, you can join us for this free webinar about the secrets to winning the interview. Make sure to register for that, completely free to you as well. And then this Thursday, if you're interested in the cloud architect role, make sure to join us for the How to Get Your First Cloud Job webinar, where we will tell you everything you need to know and exactly what you need to know to do and not to do to get your first cloud architect job. So make sure to register for all of those. Get that free interview guide. Register for the free webinars. All of this is free for you. And can't wait to see all of your success. So, as I said, tonight we're talking about interview preparation, the importance of interviews, and the importance of interviewing and the intricacies of interviewing in an uncertain job market. So I know Mike is ready to get started, but before we hear from Mike, I want to see if Alonso's got anything to share with us before we start down this rabbit hole.
Well, as always, gentlemen, it's always great to see you all here and everyone here from around the world. Like we said, we got my friend Freeman. I've known him for a very long time. Great guy. Glad he's back in the program. We have Tyrone, of course, and everyone here that's participating. But yeah, let's get into it. I think that this is just so pivotal to what we're discussing right now, because with all the uncertainty and all the, quite frankly, weird inundations of the market, being prepared and being ready to give everything that you can for the interview is pivotal and so critical. So let's get into it. What about you, Mike?
I'm always ready to go talk interviews. Interviews are one of my favorite things, and I've been studying them the psychology, the sociology, the neurolinguistic program, the techniques, the tactics, how to relate, how to establish rapport, how to sell yourself for 25, more than 25 years. And I've helped medical people get hired, technology people get hired, and it's one of my favorite things in the world. So I'm always ready.
All right, Mike. So I got you up in the big box there. I figured we'd let you start us off
Yeah.
with talking about the importance of interview skills
Yeah.
and training for the interview. Figured there's no better person than you, who's probably arguably trained more than people than me and Alonzo combined and
Yeah.
multiplied. So let's hear what you share your insights on the importance of interview skills and training.
So sounds great. And I've been a coach now for getting close to a quarter of a century. And I'll tell you, when it comes to coaching, or whether it's sports or interviews, you have to be ready for game day. Imagine people would practice all year long, then take off 3 months, and then go try and compete in the Super Bowl. Well, that would be a fail. And how do most people treat their career? They worry about their skills. And hopefully they learn the right skills. Usually they learn the wrong skills, but let's give everybody the benefit of doubt and say they learned the right skills. And then they go on the interview, and it's time to play in that world record game. And they didn't train for the interview at all. And I want to put it into context how important this is. Imagine if you had a world-class flutist, a drummer, a cymbalist, somebody that plays the clarinet, a guitarist, a bass player, and you said, here, play together, but they never met each other before. It would be a disaster. Now, imagine you take all those skilled people, you put them together, you train them, and they play together, and now you've got a symphony. Now, granted, I'm not a conductor of an orchestra, but I do like music, especially if it's reggae. But, keep that in the back of your mind. You got to train for what you're going to be good at. Now, whether you're training military people or you're training interviews, here's the thing. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall at a level of your training when you're stressed. I'm going to say this again. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your training. That's why the better prepared you are, when times are good, when you're under stress, the better you'll do. Now, the reality is for the people that are not medical people, the people that have not studied neuropsychology for the last couple of decades like me and don't find it exciting, we have a lot of different parts of our brain. Right now, we're relaxed. We're talking with the prefrontal cortex part of our brain. Life is good, logical reasoning. Alonzo says something to me, and I can come back with an intelligent response 99% of the time. 1% of the time, it'll make them laugh hysterically. But 99% of the time, it's going to be good and rock solid. Same thing with Chris. Because we're relaxed. We're using our prefrontal cortexes. That's the logical reasoning part of our brain. Now we get stressed. And I put through some of my students' stress interview tactics last week. This prefrontal cortex, the smart part of your brain, shuts off. The amygdala, the freeze, fight, or flight part comes in, and what you get could be anything. If you've ever had a fight with your girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, children, and you said something you regret, you know exactly how nasty that amygdala can be. When that prefrontal cortex shuts down, the worse you're going to be. So the better prepared you are, the better you're going to do in an interview. And it's not just that. The interview is like an Olympic gold medal. They interview 100 people for the job and one gets hired and the other 99 are on the sidelines and they don't get participation trophies. Nobody says, here, I'm going to pay you because you didn't get hired. Here's your silver medal. Here's your bronze medal. No, you're done. It's over. The opportunity is lost. And when we're dealing with high-paying careers, and a lot of careers in tech pay a lot more than you imagine. Every day that you're not working costs you a lot. The average cloud architect, for example, earns $800 a day. A good one, and I was a principal architect within 2 years, earns about $1,600, $1,700 a day. And I can show you the statistics for that easily, and I'll happily do so tonight. So for a principal architect, every week that you're not working, realistically speaking, is costing about 10 grand. So the key is when you're trying to get hired, your interview matters. When you want a better job, your interview matters. I've trained the interview so much that I've walked in on healthcare architect interviews and they said, oh, Mike, it's kind of beneath you. Would you consider being a distinguished architect in our company? My first job, I applied to be a network engineer. I had zero tech background whatsoever. I knew nothing about tech, literally nothing. And they made me a network engineer 4 or a senior network engineer 4 levels above the rest. Why? Because I studied for the interview. And I know I do this all the time, but we'll talk about the financial implications of preparing for the interview. I'll just show you a lot of different jobs. There's a pay differential. So people are obsessed with certifications, which can on average raise your salary $10,000 a year. That's nice. It's helpful. It really is. But, here's a job for a senior director at IBM with a pay range of $314 to $521K. That's $207,000 difference. Here's another one. A Google professional cloud architect or a principal architect at Google. $394 to $677 with an average pay of $508. Almost $300,000. I'm not Mr. Math. But to me, and I'll tell you why it matters. Another solution architect at at Microsoft, average pay of $379, but a range of $300 to $495. Now, I'll tell you the two things that are based on. Amazon, it's the lowest paying of the bunch, but $291 to $491 with an average of $392. There's lots of great companies you can work for. Senior director over here at Cisco, pay range of $417 to $689. Again, almost $300,000. I could pick any tech job in the world. Senior director at Palo Alto, $425 to $709. Now, what is this all based upon? Well, it's based upon a couple things. The interview is $50,000 to $100,000 of that salary. Right then and there. A better interview is worth $50,000 to $100,000 for you every year with any one of those jobs. So $100,000 a year for 30 years is $3 million. Where do you want to be in retirement? So while everybody else is focused on their certification and only their tech skills, don't make that mistake. Get that extra $50,000 or $100,000. Learn how to build the perfect resume. It's like the perfect bait. Get the best job interviews and get hired. Don't waste your life. Don't waste your skills. Get hired. So, that's just an example of pay. Now, the other parts of those pay are the person's levels of emotional intelligence, the person's levels of business acumen, the person's leadership skills, the person's sales skills, the person's executive presence, and how effective they are in the role. I'm going to make that clear. But it's not your experience. Today, AWS was hosting a training session for new chief technology officers, and it was based on if you got hired as a CTO with zero experience. And yes, that's the key. People end up in big jobs with no experience because they're good interviewees. So that's really, really, really the key. And the other side of it is, and we see this with engineers, the people that really know the tech. They know it, but they can't explain it. And here's the reality. If you can't explain it, I can't hire you because I don't know what you know. I don't know what's in your head. I can't mind read you as a hiring manager. So it doesn't matter how good you are or how good you think you are. If you can't pass the interview, it's all for naught. Again, I don't want to see anybody waste their time. So the interview gets the better jobs. It gets you hired for jobs you couldn't even imagine. It gets you paid more. So why do most people ignore interview training? I don't know. I can't understand it if you try and tell me. It's like preparing all season for a game and then just getting drunk the night before and not sleeping and then trying to show up to the World Series or the Super Bowl or the Olympics. It doesn't make any sense to me. So get your interview training. Now, the interview it's a formal process. And I'm going to tell you right now, the harder the interview, the better it is for you. And here's why. Most people are lazy. When I was at Cisco, working for Cisco, and I joined one of the more elite teams, I already worked there, and they had 16 interviews for me to move up. 16. And if any one of those 16 people said no, it would have been over. I traveled 100,000 miles just for those interviews, just to talk to people all over the world, and I already worked there. I'm not joking. Never would have gotten a job like that without it. And that job changed my life. But, there's neuro-linguistic programming involved in the interview. There's the psychology of the interview. There's the connecting to the person and speaking, whether they're a visual, auditory, and kinesthetic person to that interview. Whether they're a functional, analytical, or a visionary leader, you got to speak their terms. There's the reconnaissance of figuring out what matters to the hiring manager. how you create rapport. Who are they by looking at things inside of their office? Reading their body language so you know how to talk and not talk. There's an element of sales to the hiring manager. Any good job, and I mean any good job that's going to pay you $150,000 to $700,000 a year, is going to require a presentation. That's right, you're going to have to present on the interview. So how good are your presentation skills? How good are you reading people? How good are you reacting to questions when it comes down to it? Can you control the interview? Can you show the interviewer that you are the king and queen and everywhere in between? Can you mitigate your weaknesses and position your strengths? Just think about this. If you were going to sell a yacht, you'd have a good sales rep, right? If you wanted to sell $1 million house or a $10 million house, now $1 million house in San Francisco is nothing. It's not even one bedroom. So you might not need a really good sales rep for that. But if you were in Florida and wanted to sell a $10 million house, you're not going to use a sales rep that doesn't know how to sell. They're going to find someone that knows how to find the right customers, communicate to the customer in their language. And that's what the interview is. The interview is a sales call. And the better your preparation for sales, the better the product I can sell. And let's face it, we are the product when we go on an interview. It is up to us to command the best respect. So part of that involves the right resume. Part of that, because the resume is an advertisement that says why I should interview. Part of you is your strategy in the interview. When everybody else is playing checkers and responding and reacting to questions, you should be playing chess. You should be planting seeds to the hiring manager of what questions they should actually ask you to highlight your strengths in both what you say, what you look, what you walk, what you talk. You should know how to look at the hiring manager and gauge their level of response and double down on what's working and be quiet on what's not. You should be able to know the needs of the company and show the hiring manager how you can help them get promoted. That's right. You got to show them how you can get promoted. When every other person's on TikTok talking about work-life balance, and when other people are on TikTok saying, could you believe my manager wanted me to do this? Or can you believe this company is interested in making money? Or any of the other destructive things due to their career? You need to find out how you can sell you to the hiring manager. And it doesn't matter if it's a healthcare interview, a tech interview, but I'll tell you, here's where it really matters. When you want to get out of that basic entry-level job, when you want to skip the entry level completely, none of my students take entry level jobs. You're not going to find them starting with help desk unless they want to, or admin roles unless they want to. Most of my students don't even start with engineering roles. They go beyond them into architecture roles and leadership positions. I even had a student that was so well trained on the interview, a guy from New Jersey, that walked on a cloud architect interview and they wanted to know if he was interested in being the chief information officer. And it's not like he had 20 years of tech background. He was new to tech, but he is sharp and smart and he trained for the interview. So train for the interview like your life depends upon it and your career depends upon it. Because guess what? It does. It truly does. So I'm not one to beat around the bush. I'm not one, to really be shy about things. Your interview training is just as important as your career training. It should not be an afterthought. There's a science to the interview. Imagine training for a skill which could be worth $150,000 to $500,000 a year, and your career skills are worth $150,000, and the interview skills can get you the $300,000 job. I know people that'll literally spend 12 hours a day for a year studying for the career and 2 hours for the interview. And guess what they get? The bottom. You know how when they get out of the bottom? Never. Because they keep going for the interview and I know the tech, and you don't want to be a tool. And I've been in tech now forever, and I wish somebody told me these secrets when I started. The senior leadership views the techies as the geeks, as the nerds. And I've been that nerd, believe me. But when you're out that nerd that knows how to speak the same language as the executives, you're no longer the nerd. Now you're the person with the skilled tech skills and the skilled business skills and the leadership skills. And you're the coolest dude or lady in the room. And then you're treated like this. You're respected like this. Your people fight for you. You get job offers without even looking for them. Magazines come trying to see if you want to speak. Even today, I was commenting for 2 different publications. They asked me for my thoughts and comments because I've been an architect for a while and I've really helped a lot of people with their business. So, that's the key. It doesn't matter how good you are if you can't present it. The statistics on sales are clear. You could have a $6 bottle of vodka, and then you could spend $2 extra on the bottle and charge $20 for it because the packaging's better. And there's a really good guy who goes and rehabs businesses. His name is Marco Simonis. You should watch him on CNBC. And he's always focused on the packaging and how to take sinking businesses and make them more profitable. And a lot of it has to do with the packaging and the branding. And in the interview, you're going to put that stake on the ground that says, this is me. So I want you to shine. So please get the interview guide and please join us on How This Webinar. But I want you to change your thinking. Employers hire in a bad economy and a good economy. What if I told you of the 5 jobs I interviewed for, I got hired by all 5, and 3 of them were in hiring freezes or during layoffs themselves? That's right. When I joined Cisco in 2003, everywhere I went, they're like, I don't know you. And I'm like, yeah, because I just started a month ago. They're like, no. Cisco hasn't hired anybody. We've been in a hiring freeze for 2 years. And I'm like, I'm here. And this went on for 6 months to a year. How long have you been here? 6 months. Wait, we're not hiring. And I said, well, they hired me because I had a unique skill. I was at Riverstone Networks, and there were 13 layoffs when I was there. And I changed all kinds of jobs because I had these career agility skills. And in every interaction I had with somebody, I basically did an interview. And on every interaction, every time I met, I knew the company was going to be doing layoffs. So I kind of did the sales spiel about me to show whatever leader I was in the room with that they can't be there. So I don't want to turn this into a monologue. I just, Chris asked me to talk a little bit about, interviews. And clearly I'm passionate about the interview. I mean, I used to read I read probably 3,000 books that are related to the psychology, the sociology, the presentations of sales, because I love the interview so much. So let's get back. Let's hear from Alonzo. Let's hear from Chris.
Well, I don't know what to say after that, Mike. So I think that I think you hit a lot of points. I got the buzzer.
There's a little delay there on the buzzer, Mike.
Okay. I said, like, what? I just got started. But to the overall point,
that was definitely for Mike.
But to the point, I think it's proper preparations prevents very poor performance. Mike had mentioned it. You have to be strategic in how you start the interview all the way to you end the interview. Just because the interviewer is giving you questions, it does not in any means or any it doesn't make sense that you can't still guide where the conversation goes. Okay, so however they execute these questions, understand that there's going to be a certain loose script, if you will, to better understand and frame your competency, both emotional intelligence, your technical ability, your leadership ability, your soft skills ability. And a lot of that is something that you can prepare for. So you're never going to know exactly where the conversation is going to go and at what time, but always be prepared with a set amount of criteria to be able to respond in a way that helps you control the interview, leave every question open-ended in a positive light of how you continually enhance your skill set, enhance your credibility, enhance your ability to be a contributor and valuation to the organization, and you're still continually will come out on top. Now, Andrew, he had mentioned about, say, for instance, what is your weakness? And don't give that cliche because I'm a perfectionist, because they're going to shoot you down fast, kill the interview, and no matter what you say, they're always going to say, okay, he's just going to tell me or she's going to tell me that they're this super hardworking, never quit X, Y, and Z. So whatever weakness that you have, be able to frame it that it's humanizing, it's relatable, but also something that you have grown from and that you can, again, turn that weakness into a strength and how it can be exemplified and beneficial to the company. So that's what I have to say for right now. What about you, Chris?
Chris is muted.
Chris, you're on mute.
Interesting point. I love our shows because we don't always have to agree with each other. So
Yeah.
I absolutely hate, and I love you guys. Y'all are awesome. But I hate the turn your weakness into a strength. Like that I can't stand that. But what I will say is mitigate your weakness. Your weakness, your weakness cannot be a game ender. It can't be a discussion ender.
No.
And Andrew, you're in our program, so you'll get a lot more of this. But you know, you started to hit on something. The weakness needs to be something that is teachable
Mm-hmm.
because I can train people on certain things, and I can't train people on other things. So your weakness has to be something that can be trainable. So that, uh, yeah, I'm not, like I said, I'm not a big fan of the turn your weakness into a strength thing, at least not in an interview setting. But like in life, yeah, by all means, make your weakness a strength. You do that by working on your weakness. But in an interview, I don't partake in that Kool-Aid. Um, but I'm more of and you guys know this about me. I'm more of a pragmatist. I'm more of a realist. So here's the situation. I'm gonna tell you, here's my weakness, but it's not gonna end the discussion, and it's gonna be something that's trainable. And um, so that's because you'll hear it from people all the time. I can I can train on XYZ. I can't train this. I mean, if this person has this, I'm hiring them because I can't train that.
Yeah.
So if your weakness happens to be something that can't be trained, that's not a good weakness to use in the interview. um, so that's my 2 cents on that part. And Mike, if you want to throw anything in on that, and then we'll get down to my list of brass tacks.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Alonzo mentioned one. And, 25 years ago on my first tech job, they asked me my strengths and weaknesses. And this is before I really understood exactly what I needed to do. And I said, to be fair, my strength is my ability to learn and my effort and the amount of work that I'm willing to go to get the job done. My weakness is I'll take on so much work that it'll exhaust me, but I'll still get the job done. And here's the look I got from the hiring manager. Now, he still hired me because the rest of my interview was good. 6 months later, we're having a dinner. And he said, Mike, I thought you gave me this BS answer on the interview. In fact, I was so disgusted when you talked about taking on so much workload. He said, but you run circles around everybody else, and you do take on more work than anybody else. You're like, and you do look tired. But he remembered it to tell me 6 months later because he thought it was a nonsense answer. Because so many people use that. In my case, I don't exactly make a good liar, and I was actually truthfully coming up with something, but it's been overplayed so many times that I learned otherwise.
It's cliche.
I mean, 40 years ago, it might have been a novelty answer, but
not now. It's cliche. I typically tell people, look, let's be fair. Of my strengths is that I can achieve a lot. I get along well with others. I relate to others. I can sell. I'm good at X, Y, and Z. My weakness is I'm disorganized. And in order to stay disorganized, what I've done is this, and this. Still not my strength, but I've been able to overcome it, and that works. Yeah. I had somebody tell me their weaknesses, they were lazy. I can't train people out of laziness.
You can't fix that.
Yeah, no. So
that's a personal motivator.
You bring up a good thing there. That's a kind of a mixture of mine and Alonso's approaches there. So it's not necessarily turning it into a weakness, but it is bringing up a weakness that is trainable or mitigatable, and then explaining how you've mitigated it. So you're not turning it into a strength, but you're saying, yeah, here's my weakness, but here's what I've done. Here's what I do to mitigate that. So it's kind of a merger between those two. I like that.
I had somebody else try to tell me, I'm super smart. I know more than any 10 engineers, but I don't like people and I won't talk to people. And I went, it was nice to meet you. Everything
Yeah.
we do requires a team.
And that's exactly why we ask that question as hiring managers,
Yeah.
because that makes it easy for us. So we get those types of answers, and we know exactly where to look.
And
Um,
there's another one, like there's no one who's going to get along with everyone, and never say that. Be able to say that I am adaptable, or I am able to try to understand other people's personalities, find a way to leverage that as a benefit for all, or something to that effect, but never say I can get along with anyone and I can lead anyone without any effort. Humanize yourself, but able to do that from a position of strength where you can say, I can grow from it, as Chris mentioned before, and that you're able to elevate from where you are and be able to provide. And again, I say this, actively valuation for the organization.
so what I hear from you is no absolutes. I like
No
that.
absolutes. No,
No, absolutely.
no, never. Because if you say that, then like you said, you come off as, and I dare say this, as a fertilizer artist, if you get my meaning. And no one wants someone who's willing to say and do whatever they can to secure that interview, because you come off as being disingenuous, dishonest, and if they don't believe you, then the clients won't either. And that'll tend to run everyone away and may cost multi-million dollars in business if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time speaking that type of language.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So before we get down my rabbit hole of things here, I got a
Yeah.
question. I'd like to get any of your input. I only have one that comes to mind. Um, Other than that, I don't think it's something you get out of a book. Could you please share your
Mm,
top books for interviewing?
King Leo, I don't think there's any book that's going to teach you how to interview. You're going to need interview training. Now, I would say that any book that teaches you psychology, sociology, neurolinguistic programming, and sales and presentation skills, and works on your emotional intelligence and leadership skills will be of assistance to you. So anything related to Dale Carnegie about selling or the little red book of selling will help you to a degree. But, that's maybe one or two of, 30 books on sales that you need to read. Understanding how people think, understanding how to read body language. I've read lots of books on body language too, reading, and I've spent years studying it. Understanding how to control your thoughts. For example, King Leo 92, last week in class, I put people in a stress position and I interviewed them. And I asked them questions that they knew that they could give me explicitly good answers. I asked people to tell me about their hobbies and things that they loved. And you could see when they were calm, smooth. When they were stressed, with the exception of two people, it fell apart. And even those two people that didn't fall apart, were degraded, but they were still solid. And then we used some breathing and meditation techniques and we showed others. So there's that. So I can't tell you a single book. I can tell you anything on sales. I will tell you any of the Goldman books on emotional intelligence are good. I will tell you anything on marketing is good because you got to market yourself and you got to build your brand. So the things that, MBA students would get on marketing and then some would be pretty helpful to you because you got to market yourself. Now you also have to interview, you have to negotiate. So, how do you negotiate? Personally, I mean, I use a lot of the work of the Harvard Negotiation Project, and I use a lot of work from Chris Voss. Harvard Negotiation Project's a little more accurate in most cases, but some of the FBI hostage negotiation techniques are good as well. So I tend to use a little both of them in combination. So it's not a single book. It's not like I could say you want to learn BGP, read Internet Routing Architecture from Bassam Halabi. You're going to know 80% of what you need to know. So I would say top books include Sales, Leadership, Executive Presence, Emotional Intelligence Strategies, Neurolinguistic Programming, and Body Language. And that's a great question you asked. But, we're talking about a pretty big, broad topic about how you do this. It's not just one book that's going to teach you an interview. Any of you guys have any other thoughts?
Definitely. There's no you interview depending on what your job is. You're going to be interviewing specifically for that role, which may entail different criteria out of what being a cloud architect is. But the one thing we'd say is that make sure that you're able to effectively do what Mike had mentioned, understanding the technology, understanding who the company is, because I've seen so many times where someone would come in and it was very obvious they didn't know anything about the organization. They just wanted a job. So if someone just walks in here without knowing anything, so it gives the impression that you're unprepared, you don't know what you're going to be doing, and it just shares that lack of knowledge. So understanding that there are certain levels and lists of criteria to have that's focused specifically on cloud architecture is where you could begin and understand how to frame that interview skill set for that impending job interview.
Yeah, and I got to get to that's ridiculous because his comment doesn't make any sense, but I want to help out for the others that are here. He says that you can't read body language.
Can I answer before we jump into that one? Because I wanted to answer before we jumped into that one because I want to jump on that one really fast.
Yeah.
So as much as you like to take control, Mike, you forget who's MC here. I'm in trouble.
He didn't buzz you though, at least.
No, no buzzing. I just come straight out and say, no, hold your horses. All right. So as far as books for interviewing, autobiographies of famous people. And by famous people, I mean people that have influenced the world. So autobiographies from people that talk about how they accomplished things. Biographies or autobiographies about people like Winston Churchill, Grant, Roosevelt, Steve Jobs, these types of things. But you have to know what you're looking for when you're reading them. Because the same tactics and same mentality that they had in changing the world and influencing the world is the same thing that is going to help you influence and change your interview. Absolutely. So that's the types of things that if you're looking for something to read, you're not going to pick it up and read it in a book that's, hey, how to win the interview. No. Or 101 things to win the interview. No, you're not going to find it in those types of books. No. Find it and hear it from people that have changed things, that have created things, that have done things. That's where you're going to find it if you're reading it. So yeah, Mike wanted to jump to the one that I wanted to jump to right now. So if you didn't just see body language from me right now,
exactly,
body language. There's literally body language in every interaction. Yeah. The only way that there's not body language is if I do this right here. Now you can't see my body language.
Right.
But there's body language. Trust
exactly. Me. So there's a couple of things you're still reading. So look carefully at me. Bring me to the center of the screen. I'm going to fake a smile. That's a fake smile. How can you tell? It's only my lips. There's nothing in the forehead. Mm-hmm. Now, so one of you guys asked me about my cat, Cindy.
Well, I want to see a picture of your cat, Cindy.
Okay, I'll get you.
See, there it is. Eyes lit up.
So you can see the difference. Now, the data from Harvard is that 55% of all communication is what you look like when you say something. 38% is what you sound like, and 7% is what you said. Now, hi, my name is Mike Gibbs. You got nothing. But did I sound like that? No. If you speak to someone and they lean in, they're interested.
Right, that's what I was about to say. Like right now, literally, like me right now, like I'm leaning in.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I'm normally at.
Yeah.
But like I was leaning in. So it's you don't get the full body language, but you still get some, and you have to focus on what you have.
Mm-hmm. And you got a lot of information. You look at my room, you see a palm tree and an olive tree. Maybe Mike Gibbs is from the Mediterranean, which I am. Maybe he likes Mediterranean things, which I do. Chris's background shows Tampa.
No, so, it shows St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg. It's
a good conversation piece, though.
He said, "Get it right, Mike."
But that's a good conversation.
Same city, Tampa, St. Petersburg. That's why they cluster them together.
It's not the same city. They're 16 miles apart from each other.
Yeah, that's what the people locally believe. The people that don't live there, they see it as the same city. That's the funny thing. But yeah, that's the good point. So I mean, read that. Now, what you don't have that's ridiculous is I can't look at the person's feet. And I really want to see what their feet are doing. I can't do that. But arms crossed, leaning forward, leaning back, bored. You got as much as you want. So, that's why TV provides much more body language than radio shows, which is why you'll see a lot of people after a politician will speak. Yes, this is going to be great for you. It's going to be wonderful. This new policy is going to improve the economy, while they're shaking their head because they don't believe it themselves. You can see it. So the key is there is body language. You got to look for it. Look for it. That's why you're never going to take an interview over text message. And you're not going to take it over the phone. And guess what? It's not virtual interviews. For any real job, you're still going to go there. If it's a big job, you're going to go in person. And you'll have the opportunity. I know many companies that are still flying people out for interviews, especially on more senior architect roles, distinguished architect roles, enterprise architect roles, principal architect roles. They're going to bring you out there, or they're going to give the opportunity. If you have the opportunity, go in person, especially since the trend is to bring people back to the office anyway.
You brought up a good point, Mike, about television. If TV news did not have body language, TV news would not exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So think about this. Think about this. Like, I wasn't even alive, but I know what it looked like. Was it Walter Cronkite that did the moon landing, where he took the glasses off and shook his head and talked like he didn't even say anything. Like, he didn't say anything. But you could see his body language, and that was when the desks were literally like up to here, and you couldn't see anything below his. but he, like, even me, like, not even I was born like 16 years later, 17 years later, but even I know that, like, that body language that he conveyed in 1969, it showed what he was feeling when seeing the first steps on the moon. Like, that is a perfect example of body language when all you have is what's in this little box, and their box was smaller than our boxes now. So yeah, there's body language. It's just being aware of it.
And that's the difference between an A-list actor and a non-A-list actor. Not only can they say the words, but they can master the body language that goes on with the words to make it actually believable. So yeah, virtual interviews, lots and lots and lots of body language. Now, are you trained to pick up on it? That's another story. And if you don't see it, you definitely need some serious training here, because losing 55% of all communication is not your friend. No. You want to win? You want every weapon available to your disposal, and reading body language is an excellent weapon in your arsenal. And Chris is muted again. So, is it possible to negotiate
a new salary after 6 months of contract to hire?
Well, it depends. If you're trying to apply for the job, it's very easy to when you get hired to negotiate a new salary. But when you're in a contract, you don't negotiate something. A contract means you agree to certain terms.
Right.
And if you change your agreement to those terms, you will be escorted out of that room so darn fast. Kind of like if you tried to build a house and so the builder said midway through, I'm going to charge you this. You're like, okay, by builder. Now, Amy, if you want to go work for that company and you're interviewing, yeah, you can get a lot more than that corp to hire offer if you've proven that you've done a good job. So the answer is yes, you definitely can.
Yeah, and the key to that is provide some quantifiable efforts that you've had in what we call back in the day brag books about what you've done, how you've executed, or how you've saved or improved, streamlined, or whatever, based on your responsibility, especially if you've taken on roles and responsibilities outside the expectations of that contract. You have to come in there leveraging what you can do for the company and how you've already done it. So achieve things with the expectation that you're doing things on the level you want to get hired on. Like, okay, if you're just a contractor, start taking on responsibilities as the next level up in an employment FTE position, full-time employment position. So put yourself in a position of strength and leverage what you've already done, and they'll be more inclined to consider what you want to do and bring you on as a full hire. And also just to backtrack about the communication piece, let's also remember there's nonverbals that we have to look at as well.
Yep.
So look at those pieces. That's ridiculous. Observe your room, observe what they're doing, if they're leaning back, if they're moving forward, if you're saying something that's somewhat funny and they're going along with it, or they haven't changed their expression at all. You got to learn how to navigate with those nonverbals and facial expressions and so forth, so that you can do what you have to do to win that interview.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I would have walked out of the interview.
I would have too.
I would have, if the person interviewing you doesn't even want to turn on their camera, I would have ended the interview.
Oh wow, yeah.
I would have ended. I would have ended it. That's complete disrespect. They don't give they
Yeah.
They don't give a sh yet.
Yeah, and you have to know how to control the interview.
If that's how they're going to interview you, then that's how they're going to treat you when you're hired. Like no. I'm worth more than that. Even if I've got no experience, and I've been working at McDonald's in the cleaning the grease traps. I've worked at a gas station restaurant and cleaned grease traps, so I can say this. But even if that's my only experience, they better turn on their daggum camera for me. If you're gonna interview me, turn on your camera. Show me the decency of treating me like a human being. If you're not going to do that, I will end the interview. I will not even say thank you. I will say I'm sorry, but if you can't turn on your interview, if you can't turn on your camera, I don't think this position is for me. Thanks.
Right.
Bye.
But you know what?
And there are times where I've seen that, and that's ridiculous. I'm not saying it's in your term. Sometimes companies schedule 4 or 5 interviews, and here's where I've seen this. Somebody schedules 3 interviews, and the next thing they're like, this person's a train wreck, we can't hire them. And then somebody decides to do a courtesy interview instead of telling the person, sorry, we're not going to hire you. And then they come through with their cameras shut off because the first interview didn't go well. I've seen that. Yeah. But if someone's not going to turn on their camera, they have zero intention of hiring you, and don't even waste your time with it. Yeah. But also that's part of the interview. How do you control the interview? You know, it'd be so nice to meet you. It's hard to see you. Maybe we can both have a face-to-face conversation together. You know, you got to know how to control that. And that's part of the interview training, is doing this, because intentionally, sometimes on an interview, people will put you in a bad position. I've had people start arguments intentionally, and the interview ended when I stopped the argument. Intentionally, to see if I could control the room. And it's pretty normal for me to ask questions that I know that people won't answer the answer to see if they're going to lie to me, to try and start something that would be a conflict, to see what their emotional intelligence is. So
but my assumption was that you had politely asked them to turn on the camera. At that point, they say, no, I'm out.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I'd like to meet the person behind the camera. And, if they don't acquiesce, then it's not fair to you. And it's kind of interviewing. I'm not making assumptions about if it was an AWS interview and how it ties into an influx of market based on having to take the test over again for free. So you think about that relationship and how they treat so many people that are, potentially certified. It may have some relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. But knowing how to control their interview is a key skill, and being able to say, look, it's nice for us to have a chance to interview each other to see if we're a good fit. It would feel appropriate if we both had a chance to see each other. There's lots of ways to deal with it.
Right.
Yep. Let's see. All right, let's get to some of the. Let's get to some of my show for the night. All right, so Mike talked about it a little bit, but the whole purpose of the interview is to sell yourself. You're trying to make yourself stand out. You're trying to impress the manager. You're trying to show the value, and you're trying to show them that you're what they need. That is essentially, in a nutshell, what you're trying to do on the interview. And as Mike said, having training or preparation for this is critical. And we could talk all day long about how to answer questions. We've got 50 gajillion articles about interview questions. We've got um, we could talk about um, how to dress for an interview. We could talk about how to not say yes at the first time that they offer you for an interview all the time. Maybe you make yourself a little scarce. I don't know. Let's play around with that a little bit. Or if they ask what time are you available? Oh, I'm available anytime. No,
No.
no, 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 no. Do not say that. We could talk about making sure that your resume is up to date and accurate. We can talk about all these things. At the end of the day, those are things that everybody else is going to talk about. You're going to find that in the Interviewing for Dummies book, that yellow for Dummies series of books. You're going to find those in the Interview for Dummy books. But so what I want us to talk about, we started to talk about it a little bit last week, and we didn't really get to dive into it much. I think we got about the last 15 minutes or last 20 minutes of our last week's show talking about it. But what I want us to talk about are these career agility skills that we introduced last week. And I want to start it off by what is a career agility skill? I mentioned this last week, but again, I feel like it was kind of rushed at the end. So a career agility skill is not how quickly you can jump across the street and get into the convenience store and get your drink and back to the house before the commercial break is over on the TV show. That shows agility, but that's not what we're talking about. We are talking about skills that are relatable and transferable to any role at any company at any time. Career agility, transferable skills, skills that are wanted by everybody. They oftentimes pretty much almost 100% overlap with soft skills.
Mhm.
The first one, and we talked a great deal about it last week, was emotional intelligence. So I'll put that one at the end because that's for a lot of intents and purposes. That's kind of an umbrella term for a lot of these individual skills, and at least from my perspective. So a couple of these are just career agility skills that I want to talk about. And what I want us to talk about is that the importance of being able to show these in your interview, because that's the only opportunity you've got to show that you're an effective communicator. How else are you going to show that you're an effective communicator except in the interview? You could have the best communication skills in the world, but if you can't show this in your interview, then it's not helpful to be the best communicator in the world.
Yeah.
You could have the best listening skills in the world, but how do you show that in an interview? It's important that you are able to communicate. Well, there we go, no pun intended. It's important that you are able to demonstrate these career agility skills. Because again, you can say, hey, I'm the best communicator in the world, blah, 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 blah. Okay. It's like to some hiring managers, that's like saying that you are a perfectionist and sometimes that slows you down. Like, no, that's not a weakness. Saying you're a great communicator is not actually portraying that you're a great communicator. So those are the first brought up communication skills and listening skills, and so let's talk about those for a few minutes, Mike and Alonso, if you guys want to share, because communication skills is my favorite.
Mine
That's
too.
absolutely my favorite skill out of all of them. But I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on communication skills and listening skills, and how these tie into the interview process, and in particular, interviewing now in uncertain times.
I'm going to first go with listening skills and then going to go to communication skills. Listening skills are probably the most critical thing for anybody in any professional job. And most people can't listen. I can prove it later today. I'll ask all you guys to draw a shape. I will give you precision language that people with extraordinarily good listening skills will get it right, and 98% of the people will get it wrong. I can tell you right now. And the key is, can you listen? James T was listening when he went on the interview and he said he lost control. and the interviewer looked at his watch, and it's in the chat box, and he read his body language, he was listening. He was listening to the interviewer's body language. Now, he could have also listened to the person's vocal tone. Alonzo, give me 2 examples. Tell me about something I'd be happy about, something I'd be unhappy about.
Let's talk about Cindy.
Let's talk about Cindy.
And let's talk about Mrs. Gibbs.
Well, if we talk about my wife, we're talking about something else I love. So let's talk about something you don't think I would like.
Let's talk about yoga.
I love yoga.
Or
Pick something I don't like.
Let's talk about
It's not
data.
political.
Let's talk about data or organization.
Okay, let's talk about organization. It's something
Look
we
at
really
my
have
face.
to talk
Look,
about.
I'm over here like Christmas tree.
It's something we must talk about. You know, the better you see, look at Chris and look at me. My vocal tone just dropped, and I didn't even do it
It plummeted.
unnaturally. Now, you talk to me about my wife or Cindy, I'm elated, okay? They're my favorite things in the world. Except when my wife's angry at me because I did something stupid. She's still my favorite person in the world, but I go to hiding and hang out with my cat. That I use the cat to but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, so that's the point, is listening. But what is the person telling you? Because they're going to tell you so many things. I will tell you, I've done practice interviews on thousands of people, and I give them keys to try and win me over to see if they pick it up, and they don't. I've done interviews on people that I felt bad for because they didn't have any of the skills, but they had so many good qualities that I liked them and I was considering hiring them. And I thought maybe they can listen. And if they can listen, they can learn. So I gave them opportunities to talk about what their strengths were that weren't even in the career field. And they missed it. And if they couldn't listen, I couldn't hire them either. So listening is there. Now, communication skills. If you listen to what you'll be told, you'll know how to position yourself with your strengths. You'll know how you sell yourself, and you'll be given so much information about the job that if your communication skills are good enough and your brain works quick enough because you've trained it, you'll be able to highlight yourself and how you can help that company and stand out head and shoulders above the crowd. But most people don't listen. Most don't listen. Tell me about yourself question. 30 seconds, 60 seconds. I've seen people go on for 10 minutes. I'm asleep before I answered the first question. I'm already done. The interview's already over. So how effectively can you elicit the information? Hey, wait, doctors, lawyers, architects, you got to pull the information. When everybody else is training on skills like coding, which isn't our job, we better be training on pulling information. Otherwise, we're never going to get anything done. Same thing on the interview. How do you design an architecture? You find your client's requirements. They don't hand you a piece of paper. You got to ask for them. How does a doctor determine how not to make their patient sick? I got to tell you, patient comes in, they're telling you about their cat. They're telling you about their allergies when you're trying to deal with their high blood pressure, and you got to ask questions. You got to listen, and you got to know how to ask. So kind of keep that in the back. It's not just architects. It's the same thing with engineers. I'm going to ask the engineer a technology thing, and I'm not looking for configuration commands. I'm looking for understanding. And if they can't communicate it to me, I can't hire them because I don't think they know anything. How am I going to know? It's not like I'm going to give a building test to my engineer. I'm not going to say, set up these 10 VPCs for me. I'm going to ask them, how does this work? And if they can't really explain it to me, I don't know. I just have no idea. So it's the communication skills. How quickly can you do this? How quickly can you get it out before the person loses attention? How quickly can you show that you can do the job? That's the key. Average executive has a 1/10 of 1 second attention span. I'm not joking. Can't capture them within that first second, they are gone, and you don't even have the first second. Can't capture a hiring manager job inside of the first second, they're done. It's all over. And your chances of getting them back are they're like none. It's like falling off the beam in gymnastics on the first, and then expecting to get a world record. It's just not going to happen. So, kind of keep it in the back of your mind. The communication skills piece is because the communication skills enables you to sell yourself. Can't sell if you can't communicate. It enables you to position your strengths, mitigate your weaknesses, answer questions intelligently. Can't do it without the communication skills and the listening skills. That's where you're going to be there to know what to say. How about you guys?
You made an interesting point. and I know you went right over it. You didn't realize you were making a point. Interviewers will ask a question, and they want to know exactly how they ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
They will ask you, how would you do something? And they just want to know, how would you do it? Not how do you configure it and what manner is it configured?
Yeah.
They're asking, how would you do it? Tell me how you would do it.
Yeah.
And if they wanted to know how you would configure it, or how you would build it, or how you would design it, or how you would implement it, they would say those words.
Right.
If this goes to listening. They were, I say we because I'm hiring manager. They ask questions with intent, and we know how we ask the question. And the way in which you answer the question should match the way in which we ask the question. And we will know if you didn't listen to us by the way that you answer the question.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think one thing that we have to clarify is that being a good communicator doesn't mean you have to be a fully detailed communicator.
Right.
Break down. If people don't know what we've learned when I took out my bachelor's, is especially in my MBA, is understanding what a executive summary is. That is giving the point blank, exact, boiled down, but very detailed, not detailed, but very exact, succinct to the point, discussion points of what that executive needs to learn. And one thing that I can say as an overlap is coming from the marketing field from long ago, in my many moons ago, the average attention span for any consumer is 2 to 3 seconds.
Yep.
So if there's someone in that executive position who is very busy, time is money, and that is literal in their position. So time is of the essence. They want to know exactly what you know, to the point, no added fluff, no superfluous talk or anything else. So understand that good communication doesn't mean detailed communication. It's succinct or to the point communication I'm tongue tied today, to create the most valuable amount of information in the least amount of time.
Exactly. In class I was teaching last week, I introduced the "Tell me about yourself" question, and Chris timed me because we were proving a point. I was able to answer it the way I would want to answer it in 23 seconds. And then I said, okay, I'm going to drag it out with my 25 years experience. And what I get to, Chris, 56 seconds, 57 seconds?
You started at 19 when you weren't dragging it out.
Okay. Yeah. 19 seconds.
And when you drug it out, it was 53 seconds. But in the manner in which you did it, and in the manner in which you were training everybody in the class, it was 53 seconds that was worth it. That's the key. And to clarify for everybody, what Mike was talking about is one of our classes for the Tech Interview Mastery program that's going on right now. We have another batch for the Tech Interview Mastery program that's starting next month in May. Tyrone can put the link to that in our chat box. There's currently a 40% discount for that. You can put that in the chat box there, Tyrone. But yeah, so that 19 seconds was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
53 seconds was perfectly fine when done the right way.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, trust me, I've experienced plenty of 53 seconds. That was not was not appropriate. But
yeah.
Listening is often the forgotten part of the communication. So I'm glad you shared that. Alonzo, do you want to add any more onto that? I know Mike had a lot to say.
Oh yeah,
got a little bit more.
When you're listening, look at the nuance. Look at how it's being inflected. Think about what they're emphasizing in that particular sentence there. Like Mike had mentioned before, he was giving clues, context to how they're able to help frame the question for you. They're basically laying out the welcome mat for you. But if you don't understand those particular signals or nonverbals, it'll be lost because let's look at it from American baseball. There is a lot of nuance between the pitcher and the catcher. So if you are in a client discussion with the executives, you got this huge 16-foot long table, both sides, and they're working on strategy. They're working on situations, and a lot of people are looking down the aisle or across for nuance, for pickup, for strategy, for which way are we going to go and move this conversation back and forth to win the day, or to deflect any situation that we don't have the answers to that we can provide for another day without losing face at this particular moment. There was a lot going on besides the exchange of words. So understanding that communication means, like Chris had mentioned, it is a wide spectrum of listening, is a wide spectrum of speaking. And say, for instance, if Mike had said or asked me a question about, tell me about yourself, I can ask to get a confirmation. So you want me to expound on X, Y, and Z to understand I know exactly what you're talking about without fail, without assumption. This is also an indicator they're interested in what I have to say. They're interested in getting the answer correctly, and they want to make sure that it is effective and poignant to the discussion. You see, by doing that, there was a whole lot of strategy there. So understand that there's a whole lot more than the surface. Drill down a little bit on your visuals, on your vocals, on the nuance of the discussion, the highs and lows of what, say, for instance, Cindy versus organization. Cindy was on the high. Organization, that's not something Mike wanted to discuss. So think about those inferences and so forth and so forth.
All right.
And before
So
we move on from that active listening piece,
yeah,
Robert Cialdini, who did all the work on influence and exercising influence and ethical persuasion, heavily studied this. And they found when people actually repeat back, it creates such a level of satisfaction. They did in a study, for example, of people that were serving food, and they got substantially larger tips or more money when they repeated it back, because it makes the recipient feel so good that they're being heard.
yep. All right. And also to follow up, what I mentioned, there's this is part of preparation and training. Like I can tell you this right now, and it's not going to solve anybody's problems. You have to train for this. You have to prepare for this. But you have to prepare for interviews. You have to prepare your responses. You have to have these things down, like every possible scenario that you could get asked a question. You have to know these things inside and out. But you have to be prepared not to give the response that you have prepared. Mm-hmm. Even if they ask the question that you've got that response prepared for. Because as I said a minute ago, we ask questions a certain way. And we may ask that question that you prepared for, but then specifically throw in something that says, but don't, blah, 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 blah. Like, I'm going to ask you about XYZ, but don't tell me about it in this situation or in that, like, so. And the reason I say that is because that's an example. I've seen it before, listening. They hear the first part, or they only hear the part that they've prepared for. They don't hear the part that I say, don't tell me about, like, I'm going to ask you about this, but don't do this. Or I'm going to ask you about this, and I only want you to tell me about it in this situation or in this environment, or so on and so forth. I'm not going to give away my questions, so that's why I'm being vague. But it's important that you're prepared, but you're also prepared to deviate from what you have prepared. I know that sounds wild, but it's important that you can adapt.
And you know something about this, Chris, is that people make this assumption that not only is it might be their first interview with the company, that the interviewer might be their first in their first position as the interviewer. So with all the people that they've been interviewing over the course of months, weeks, or years, doesn't it stand to reason that they've seen all the tricks and they maybe even fortified their interviewing style to purposely trip you up? So you have to be ready. You can't
Yep.
have a cookie cutter execution for everything.
Yep. So
Every good interviewer asks questions that they know the person won't know an answer to see if they lie and they can trust the person.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
they ask trick questions because you can't hire somebody that lied to you. And most people
well, and you know, you guys you're going to that direction, Mike, but that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about canned responses about their past experience
oh yeah,
that
that's true.
everybody's going to ask them, but I'm going to ask it a different way.
Yeah.
Intentionally.
So I want you have to listen to how I'm asking it.
Oh yeah.
And if you don't answer what I actually asked, then it sticks out like a sore thumb.
And,
So
and that's the problem with just learning interview questions. Now, I know I've published some documents on it, but we use it as more of a training routine, as a general thing. But the key is it's not about memorizing questions and answers. You can't memorize questions and answers for a career. That's how people pass a certification test, which is why certifications almost hold no value, as opposed to being knowledgeable and being able to prove it on the interview. And if you've ever wondered why the person that doesn't know a lot got hired over the person that knows 10 times more, it's because they were able to better prove it on the interview. That's how important it is.
so I want to deviate from our thing for a little bit here. I'm going to go to James T. We referenced this statement earlier, but I want to dive into this one. I wasn't planning. I got a whole agenda. If you know me, I'm organized. I got
Yeah,
things in
Chris does not like
but
surprises.
Nope.
but I also know my medium. I'm live, so I'm prepared for this. This is how we went from one show last week to two shows this week. So, James T. And I don't want you guys. I'm going to mute you. I'll hit the ding button if you interrupt me, guys. James
Oh,
T.
that's a threat.
says. James T. says I had an interview with an executive yesterday, and towards the end of the interview, felt I lost control. He looked at his watch, and we wrapped up our conversation after another 30 minutes. Toward the end, his body language felt different, and I felt the pressure to end the conversation and stop asking questions. However, he gave me his card and said, "We have your information." He didn't sound convincing. What could I have done to possibly recover and win the interview? Also, is giving out business cards standard business practice? First time meeting with someone that high. All right, I'm going to start off, and then I definitely want everyone else's input with this. So I'm going to go through each card one by one here, and then I'll go back through them for you guys as you asked me to. Looked at the watch right then and there. Should have been done 30 seconds later, not 30 minutes. If he looked at the watch, it shouldn't have lasted another 30 minutes. As soon as he looked at the watch, that's when you stop and you ask. Again, I don't know how the conversation is going, but that's where you stop and then offer it back to him or her or whoever it is in a manner that is appropriate for the context of your conversation. Without knowing the context of the conversation, I can't address how to offer it back to them. But that's somebody looks at their watch, or they start to, kind of wander off here, or look over here on my secondary monitor for more than a few minutes. Because if they glance over at their secondary monitor, they're looking at their list of questions. But if they stay at their secondary monitor, then you're out. As soon as those things happen, offer it back to them. Towards the end, his body language felt different. However, he gave me his card and said, "Here's your information." He didn't sound convincing. I'm sure he wasn't. At that point, you couldn't have done anything to recover. Your only opportunity to recover was within 30 seconds of him looking at his watch, if even 30 seconds. The only reason I'm saying 30 is because if it happened to be virtual, there's a bit of a lag. But if it's in real time, face to face, not even 30 seconds, like 15 seconds. Finish that statement that you're on. Don't even move to the next statement. Like finish that statement and offer it back. But other than that, you don't have any other opportunity. Yes, it's standard business practice to give out business cards.
Yeah.
It's there's a reason. I'm sure I got a box of business cards around here somewhere from my previous lives. I mean, literally, like we between my wife and I, we have thousands of business cards from our previous jobs. Like just we don't even work at these companies anymore. We've got thousands of business cards. Yeah. So that's a good opportunity to practice or to reflect on what went wrong and where you could have done. Mike and Alonzo.
Go, Mike, please take the floor. No, I let's take the cards back and let's. I can take it back to the forum. I had an interview. He felt you. Okay, James. I guess ask yourself, what did you do to lose control? Did you go back and do a gap analysis of what you felt went right, what you felt went wrong? Why did it go wrong? How did it go wrong? When he looked at his watch, at what point during that time, what were you discussing? How were you discussing it? How long were you discussing it? Was it too detailed? Was it off topic, off pitch? And then it sounds like when he wrapped up his watch, it sounds like during that time for another 30 minutes, you tried to recover, but you took far too long to try to do so. So towards the end, his body language, he was aggravated. He was ready to go. And so he got to the point when you felt the pressure to end the conversation, that was him ending it for you because he was trying to give you the time to do it yourself, but he forced it out. He gave me his card. He gave you his card. Basically, it was saying that that's actually a ploy, if you will, to say, okay, I'll give you a card, stop talking, we'll be in touch. So these are the type of strategies a lot of leaders use to command the room when the floor is no longer in your possession. So these are a lot of, again, the nonverbals and innuendo that you'll learn over time about how to keep things powerful, but to the point, play to your strengths, stay in control, be adaptable and pliable to the discussion so that you may not be able to answer every question, but take that back to the area of what you do know and fortify your position with your skill set. What about you, Mike?
James, by the time he looked at his watch, the interview was over. And I kind of want you to think about this. If you're going to a movie and you love it, you're not playing with your cell phone. If my wife takes me to one of her movies that she wants me to see, and it's not holding my attention, I'm texting Chris, I'm texting Alonzo, I'm checking my email, so there's that. The point is he didn't capture this person and hold them, and they got bored and they started looking to their phone. Then they pretty much tried to basically use negative body language until you felt like you were going to end the interview to try, because it's very hard for me, James, you can't interview someone and say, get the F out. So, when people would lie to me, I had a jar of cookies.
This guy can't.
Yeah. Well, some people can, but I can't. So I keep a jar of cookies. And the second the interview's over, I just start feeding people cookies. It usually occurs when somebody lies to me, but you can't leave a bad taste in somebody's mouth. And you can't have them angry at the company. So, that's why I give out cookies. I was taught to give a courtesy interview. And I don't feel good about it, but, there's that. So, James, prepare ahead of time. If you're James, who I think you're a really good guy with an incredible amount of knowledge, but you got to get to the point a lot quicker. You really need a little bit more preparation for these interviews. So maximize the interview, maximize your capabilities, and you're going to do just great. But, train for it. You don't go to the Olympics without practicing for it. Don't just train for the career. Really, really work hard on that interview as well, and you'll be good to go. We got an interview webinar on Friday, by the way, to talk more about that, James. So make sure you
Yes,
come
we
to the
do.
Friday.
Yes, we do. Yeah, Mike said something there that made me think about a term that I used to. I never used it out loud, but I used to think it. I think this will be the first time that I actually use it out loud. And I never use it out loud because the comparison is not near the seriousness. Um, you held him hostage. Like
Mhm.
that's how
Yeah.
that's most likely how he felt. And uh, that's how we feel sometimes in those situations. And again, like Mike said, they this individual sounds like they tried to use their nonverbal communication skills to get that across and get out of the situation. Whereas others would have simply said, thank you, I've got to get on to my next thing, or whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
But the business card is like Mike's cookies that Mike used to give out
Yeah.
in his interviews. So lesson learned. Do a deep dive into that experience, like Alonso volunteered. He said, do a gap analysis on that, do a SWOT analysis, and you'll find where it probably started to go off, because it probably didn't go off. It did not start to go off the rails when he looked at his watch. It started to go off the rails before then. So if you do an analysis of it, you'll find that, and you'll figure out what it is. So,
And James, there's a lesson in there where I talk about taking no prisoners in the course. If you're James, who I think you are, rewatch that lecture.
Angelo popped in with his always amazing questions. So we're going to do this question, then we'll get back to another piece of my content. Angelo says, how important is it to know your interviewer's communication style and adjust your responses to best respond?
Absolutely. we're thinking the same things. Angelo, it's absolutely critical. If I say to Alonso, Elena Fame, he's going to look at me like I have four heads. Now, if Alex T from our program and I say Elena Fame or Latina Fame, he's going to come eat with me. And if you're talking to a visual and you talk kind of visual terms, if I talk to Chris in my visionary terms, it gives him a headache. He tolerates it. And it drives him nuts. And he starts babbling about data to me, and I got a headache, and it's in about a second and a half. So yeah, this communication style is essential. So please listen. It'll make a $50,000 to $100,000 difference in your salary.
Yeah.
I mean, the determination of whether you get hired or don't get hired, just speaking the same language.
To clarify how important it is, it's in our training.
Yeah.
If it wasn't in our training, we wouldn't think it's important. And I know you know that, Angelo. So I think you're playing devil's advocate for us in the chat box right now. But yes, it is critical. And what more importantly than knowing their communication style is knowing the types of communication styles so that you can figure it out. I think that's what you're really asking there. Is how important is it to be able to figure out their communication style? Absolutely critical. Because if you can't figure out their communication style, you can't figure out how to win a movie. And Angelo gave me a blushing, smiling face. Yes, I knew you were playing devil's
we knew the game because we know Angelo. Angelo's rocks, incredibly rock
He
solid.
sparked some great discussion points.
He does.
All right, so let's move on to another one of these topics, guys. I don't know if we're going to be able to finish tonight. We might just have to turn this into a weekly show just about interviews. I don't know.
Probably should. It's that critical.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about communication. We talked about leadership skills. Let's talk about executive presence, or just presence in general. Before we even get to the executive level of presence, just presence. And how important that is, why that's important in an interview. So I'm over here just serving up the softballs to you guys so that you can hit them out of the park.
Yeah, I'll take that. So I mean, because the amount of training I had in executive presence, you could have purchased a car with it, with what it cost, and it's
Only
that.
one car?
Well, just executive presence training.
Oh,
I didn't say any soft skills or emotional intelligence. We could have bought a Mercedes with each one of those things, but the point is how important is it? Well, everybody, I'm going to give you an example right now. My name's Mike Gibbs. I'm a CEO. I've been in tech now for about 25 years. Worked in networking, worked in cloud, did some enterprise architecture stuff. I helped some businesses be. Now, if I said that, nobody's going to hire me as a chief architect. No one. They're going to laugh at me. They're going to be looking at their watches. They're going to be escorting me out of the room. Now, by comparison, Lonzo, so nice to meet you. My name is Mike Gibbs. I've been an architect now for 25 years, helping organizations improve their business performance with technology. I've designed billion-dollar architecture for global retailers and global banks, and have been able to achieve 10 to 15% increases in business performance. I've mentored thousands of individuals. I've trained engineers and architects across Cisco, across Riverstone Networks, now Nokia, as well as MCI WorldCom, now Verizon. I've been published in well over 100 magazines. Now, Alonzo, you interested in me?
Very much so.
So,
Very different.
first case, I got escorted out of the room. The second case, I'm applying for an $800,000 chief architect job. And I use architect terms, but it doesn't matter what it is. It could have been a distinguished engineer job. It could have been a VP of sales. All these jobs are really the same. And let's face it, all elite roles are architect jobs, because CEO architects the business strategy. VP of sales architects the sales strategy. Chief operating officer architects how the business is actually going to run and make sure that it actually works, as opposed to just visionary ideas. So, with any of these jobs, but it's that important. It truly is. And it's posture, it's vocal tone, it's everything. What you, Alonzo?
Yeah, I think you come in as a leader, and I think executive presence, don't go in there with your posture like your hat in your hand, like I need a job. You come in there saying, and I believe it's a matter of self-confidence, self-esteem, and being able to lead that discussion in that interview the same way you would if you were leading a presentation for a multi-million dollar cloud implementation from a global scale. You have to exude confidence. If you're not confident in yourself, why should I be? Why should I trust my money, my multi-million dollar 6 to 8 digit amount of money that the stakeholders are going to hold me accountable for someone who's not confident in their solution for my business?
Yeah.
So you have to look at yourself pragmatically and say, how am I dressed? How do I smell? And one thing that I don't like for people to do, this is my personal pet peeve, when you show up for an interview, don't wear cologne, don't wear perfume.
No.
Don't do it. Do not smell like food. Don't just, there should be a neutral scent to you, that the only thing people are focused on is your presence, your capabilities, your competency, and what's coming out of your mouth. So when it comes to your presence, speak eloquently, speak with force, speak with confidence. Don't blink and look, well, I'm such and such, and I think that I am. No, I'm looking you straight in the eye with intent, competency, capability to show you what I can do, tell the story my way to maximize my position to win this role, because there's tons of other people out here who want this job. If you want it, you go for it. You prepare, you do what's necessary to win this battle, and walk out of there with a assured conversation saying, we really enjoyed this discussion. We really want to set up a new time to start speaking about other steps to help you into this position. Or I would like for you to meet such and such, because some of these interviews may not be a one and done. They may be 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Or
But
more.
when you think, or more, right, Mike? So you think about, this is a minimum 200K position. So it's not going to be like you filling out an application and sliding across the counter at McDonald's. This is going to be something detailed. They want to know that they're going to get a return on their investment. So be the peacock. Spread your feathers out, showcase your capabilities, and let them know who they're dealing with.
Well put, Alonzo.
And I got nothing after that. Yeah, that's exactly what you want to do on the interview. You want to have the person that comes in after you not be able to shine a light near what you did. And so Alonzo, great presence there. Perfect example.
I do what I can, guys.
Yeah. I don't have anything to add to that. But I will attempt that, and I'll just use some examples of, like, even when we're not talking about these six-figure jobs or these senior director roles or these architect roles or senior engineer roles or any vice president roles, even when we're not talking about that, let's just take a step back to my previous life in hospitality and operations, interviewing for guest service agents in the hotel industry. I'm looking for presence.
Mhm.
I want someone that's going to have the presence that that people expect when I'm charging hundreds of dollars a night
Yeah.
for them to stay at my establishment. I'm not looking for someone that doesn't portray authority, can't speak eloquently, can't doesn't portray confidence. I'm not looking for that. I absolutely am not looking for that. And if I have someone that interviews with those characteristics, then they're not going to get the job. But if I've got someone that, and again, I'm just using this as an example. These are jobs that are, you know, 15, 17, $19 an hour. Just 4 years ago, they were $11 an hour. So even in that level, people are looking for that presence. They're looking for that. They may not call it executive presence at that level,
No.
but it's presence. And it's the same kernels of confidence and gravitas and capability. Because again, you could be the best guest service agent or the best engineer or the best architect in the world and have all the competency of that role. But if you don't have that ability to portray that and convey that and communicate that, then your interview is not going to go very far.
No.
So that's why we talk about that presence, because that's going to compound your competency. Your competency is just a baseline. The competency is that 150 or that 100,000. That's the competency. The presence on top of it. So it's going to get you from that 100 to 150, or from that 150 to 200 or 250. That's where that comes in. So, yeah, definitely not going to attempt to follow in the same vein as what Alonzo did. That's why I went in a different direction there. All right, so let's round this out with some questions that have come in. Give me a second. Okay, we answered that one. Okay, Jared says, what type of technical questions are asked during the interview? Is it more height level? Maybe we mean high level system design questions, or do they ask detailed questions about certain tools? I think it depends on the interview.
Yeah, and what career it is, Jared. We don't know your career. For example, if it's an architect thing, we're not going to ask you about tools.
Right.
But if it's an engineering thing, we might. So you have to tell us what career you're actually talking about, what it's actually going to be about.
Yeah. So we'll wait to see if anything comes in on that. Okay. Purnell, what is involved in controlling an interview? And this came in before we started talking about our career agility skills. What is involved in controlling an interview and turning an interview into a conversation? Several of the things that we talked about in the career agility skills, particularly the listening and the communication.
And the leadership.
That is how you are going to turn that interview into a conversational interview. Otherwise, if you don't have those listening skills or the ability to read, aka listen to the body language, pick up on people's unsaid desires or intentions, you can't turn it into a conversation. Because what's a conversation at home? You knowing what the person actually wants to talk about. And you pick up on that by taking in all the information, not just what they're saying.
Yeah. I mean, it's say, for instance, you're having a debate and you want to position yourself to win. So you're always going to keep that proverbial ball in your court. So that is why I was saying it's like just because they're interviewing you doesn't mean that you don't try to control that interview and pivot it in a way that you come out as a solution for the organization, no matter what they throw at you. Even if you don't know the answer, you can still turn it around, just like Mike profusely says, be honest, but turn it around and say, I don't know it, but you tell me what you want me to know. I will engage in the pursuit of that knowledge, and I will make sure that I am readily available and capable to get this thing done for our team. You don't know what it is right now, but you just transacted that lack of knowledge for your enthusiasm, your determination, and tenacity to get the job done. So you see how you can control that. So use that, Purnell, as a means, as that example for anything that you don't know, anything that you know how to do or you don't know how to do. Engage it to the point where you're able to end that as something saying, oh, wow, they know what they know. Oh, wow, they don't know it, but they're willing to learn it for this company. So use it that way, Purnell.
Yeah.
Before Mike chimes in, there's another piece that ties directly into the reading and listening. What if they don't want it to be a conversation?
Yep.
You've got to be able to pick up if they're actually open to that. They may want a brass tacks by the books interview. You have to be able to pick up on that. So it goes back to the communication and the listening and the reading people. So I wanted to throw that in there. You may not be able to turn every interview into that conversational interview. And you'll be able to pick up on that if you've properly been trained, properly prepared on how to read. So any thoughts, Mike?
Absolutely. And Chris alluded to something. I had a WebEx interview back in 2003. And I had already worked for the company I was getting promoted, and I had to interview for the promotions. And as soon as I get on this WebEx interview, I get the impression that the hiring manager it was a VP, that just wanted to babble. And he was babbling and babbling, and I looked at him and I said, I'm not even going to talk until he asks me something. He babbled. I listened affirmatively. Next thing I realized, I really like you. I'm going to move you on to the senior vice president for the next conversation. The key is you got to read what's going on in the room, and there's never not a time not to read. There's always a body language, a vocal tone, there's something. But the key is, do you have the leadership to lead? Do you have the sales skills to scale? Can you read the body language, the sound to go in there? Do you know what you're going to pivot to? Because you got to be able to know what to pivot to. But are you paying attention? There are so many things going on around you. Are you watching each and every one of these things? Because you can use that. And do you have the emotional intelligence to do it? Do you have the communication skills to do it? And do you have the presence to be seen as a peer on the other end of the phone? Or are you not going to be seen as a peer because you don't have the presence? It's a combination of all those things, not necessarily something we can do that quickly.
Okay, so I'll start off with this one. Julian says, I was scheduled for an interview last Friday. I showed up on Microsoft Teams. No one was there. Waited for 10 minutes, then signed out. 1 hour later, HR told me that hiring manager took the day off. Red flag? No.
Probably not.
No.
If you were with us last week, you heard me talk about how broken the system is. The entire HR and hiring, not HR, excuse me, the entire hiring process is just broken. And this is just one small example of how it can be broken. This is probably a simple thing. The hiring manager had time off. It had been scheduled for months, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And but HR didn't know this, or the recruiter in human resources or somebody didn't know this and scheduled an interview.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, the guy or gal, they're not going to show up when they're in Key West drinking their margaritas and going and kayaking in the mangroves. No, they're not. But so no, that's not a red flag. That's right up there with job descriptions not being accurate. Just because a job description is not accurate doesn't mean the job's not worth it. So this is more than likely just a case of there's too many chiefs and not enough Indians as far as the scheduling goes. The scheduling, you got too many people in charge of the scheduling of that interview. And if it wasn't something that they had scheduled off in advance, maybe their 7-year-old at the last minute said, "Oh, tomorrow's to bring your dad or mom to class day, and I told everybody you were going to be there." What do you think they're going to do? They're going to use a PTO day and go to that 7-year-old to bring their parent to class day. So that's not a red flag. At least I don't think so, gentlemen. What are your thoughts?
I would put it in my take note of it category.
Yeah.
That you're going to wonder if the hiring manager is a flake or not, and you don't know. Now, the reality is HR in most organizations and the recruiting process is so broken that we bypass HR because we don't want to deal with them because they usually mess everything up. But you don't know if the person got sick that day, had a death in a family member. So I would put it in my caution.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't necessarily view it as a red flag exactly for the reasons Chris had said.
Yeah. And then also, Julian, the fact if you're willing to accept a reschedule and show up, that's points for you. So leverage that in saying that shows my ability to be tenacious, adjust to any unforeseen circumstances, and still be able to provide and leverage my valuation for the organization. They just gave you a free shot throw in American basketball to throw that in to showcase that, because a lot of people, they may have just said, "Oh, forget it. I'm not going to do that," especially with a lot of the quiet quitting, a lot of the ghosting that people have done in the past. So if that's something that you want to actively pursue and do it, or it all depends on how you felt about the situation. But that is one way that you're able to control that narrative. The struggle with virtual interview focus on camera or person. Okay.
Let's dissect this.
Okay. Yeah.
It's no different than any other interview. You got to look the person in the eye and read the person in the room. There's no change here. So in a regular interview, I'm looking at Alonzo in the eyes, and at the same time, I'm reading the room. Now, to be fair, it's much more challenging on a PC, and I'll tell you how you get around it. The key to do this right is to set up your camera in the right spot. Again, this is your preparation. Alonzo has this great thing: proper preparation prevents something poor outcomes. He can tell it to himself, but the point is did you prepare? Did you test your cameras ahead of time? When you look at the screen, can you still see the camera? Now, if you really want to do it right, and remember, this is not a place to be cheap on the interview. Don't do it. Invest in a better suit. Heck, invest in a teleprompter. When I do big media interviews with big media, and not like something like this, I've got another camera set up where I can actually see the person on the screen and the camera's inside of the computer screen. So to be able to do it, keep that in mind. I might invest in a $1,500 teleprompter if I was trying to get a $250,000 job and it was brand new to me. I'd rather spend $1,500, get a $250,000 job and not have it. But the key is it's not that much different. You got to look at the same screen. I'm balancing it right now. I'm predominantly looking at Alonzo and Chris's body language, and then I'm looking at the camera when I try and speak or things. So the key is balance it.
You're on mute, Chris.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a step back from the $1,500 suggestions and just talk about the parts that Mike was talking about, balancing it out. Like, people know that you're interviewing on a computer, so they're not expecting you to look at them all the time. They know that you have to look at them down here so that you can actually see them. They understand that, but don't look down here the whole time.
Yeah.
You have to balance it. You have to get balance. And to practice, and simple ways that you can practice that: minimize your Zoom window and put it as close to the camera as possible on your monitor. You know, and only have just the interviewer there. You don't have to have the whole Zoom set up or the whole Google Meet set up. Just make it smaller and put it right as close as you can to the camera. And practice. And the more you practice, the more you can get used to balancing it out. Because even in real life, you're in a interview, it is awkward to look directly at the person the entire time.
Yeah.
So even in real life, you're not looking in their eyes the entire
100%.
time. That is disconcerting. So it's okay if you're not looking directly at the camera the whole time. So balance it out. Just like in a real interview, if you're in person, you're talking to them, and then you happen to glance over to the wallpaper or the artwork or the out the window because the sun is shining. I don't know, but yeah, get used to balancing it. Practice it and practice it. It is something that we have to practice.
You know, this is not necessarily relatable, but it is debatable. Is if you the pros is it's ridiculous is that in a way you're on your own playing field, so that gives you a little bit of confidence. You're able to interview in your own home or wherever your place, your choice place is. Just make sure it's professional. But the one thing that I've learned, that I've noticed people do in interviews, just because you are at home does not mean you can take advantage of the space and add some sort of cheat sheet on the side, because we know. We know very well. So just thought I'd mention that.
All right. Betty says, I recently had an interview with a hiring manager and I hit it off. We had an awesome conversation like interview. And when we got to the end, he said the position had already been filled. Why would they set an interview knowing the position is no longer available? Ooh.
Okay, we're going to give you two answers to this, Betty.
Yeah.
Oh, most likely, let's see.
Actually, three. The most likely reason is the interview did not go as well as you thought it did, and they told you it was filled. The second possibility is, and I'm going to give you an 80+% chance that's actually what happened, that they liked something about you as a person. They didn't feel you could do the job, so they tried to just turn it into a casual conversation, something my first manager called the courtesy interview. Option two is, sometimes a company will have already determined they're going to hire an internal candidate, and the company will force them to interview 3 external candidates. When I joined Cisco, for example, they had already picked out an internal candidate to hire, and they interviewed me as a fake, wasted interview. What ultimately happened is I did so well on the interview, I replaced the person that they had offered the job to, and boy, that was an interesting first day, let me tell you. But typically speaking, the interview probably didn't go as well as you thought it did. And the third is, maybe it just got filled that day, which is unlikely, but they just followed up on the interview to see if they could put you in another position. And if they like you, they'll call you and tell you they've got something else for you. Either of you guys want to add to that?
Nope.
Because I've seen this before.
Yeah, it's usually they were in a position where they honestly, their back was against the wall and they had no choice but to try to deflect the opportunity that you thought you had there. So to Mike's point, that's probably what happened, Betty.
I got I actually wouldn't have gone with any of these answers. I think it's a after product. And we're probably going to stop seeing this. It's an after product of what tech companies just got caught doing. which was filling their stable with a bunch of people that weren't doing anything. And they 6 months ago, you probably would have been hired because they were hiring everybody and without any work. And this is kind of a byproduct of that system not working anymore. Now they can't actually fill these positions, and they're trying to figure out how to do these hiring practices that they got used to doing. And it's because I've never interviewed and I've never seen or heard of anyone interviewing and being told the outcome of that job during the interview. I've not seen that. So that's not too common, actually.
It's not very common,
No.
but I know one or two hiring managers that did it if they couldn't hire the person, but they liked them a lot, like they liked their character, they liked who they did.
Right. But only saying the position has been filled. Period.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
there's usually something after that.
Yes.
Like that's what I'm saying. Like, but only that the position is no longer available. If there's nothing else, I've never heard of that. Never heard of that having happened in real time during the interview. Now I've heard plenty of examples of people saying, unfortunately this position isn't available, but I did want to continue to interview you in case this other fill in the blank. So I don't know, maybe there was something after it and you didn't share that with us, but yeah, I'm kind of shocked that they would point blank say that the position is no longer available, period.
Like that small chance that it may have happened that day or before you were able to.
Even then, I've filled a position the same day that I've interviewed somebody, and I haven't said that. Like I've closed it out with what Mike talks about, we filled this position. I wanted to continue. I still wanted to interview you because of, and so on and so forth. Like there's others, like in the future,
maybe the interviewer just wasn't good.
There may be an opportunity coming out that's coming down the pipeline, and I wanted to get you go ahead and get this out of the way. Like that's what I'm saying. Like without any of that without anything after that period, I've never heard of that.
I know, and I've seen a lot of it. I've seen people do it if it was just a conversation terminator, but I've also seen it. Hey, wait, this position just got filled, but
right, yeah.
I like you so much that let me keep looking for you, and that could be as well. So we don't have the last part of it.
Okay. She said that they said they would keep me in mind once something happens. Okay.
That was a good delivery of the interview.
So you got to give us
Federal information changes everything. Talk about listening. We didn't have access.
Totally frames the.
It changes.
That changes everything.
Then it's not the situation they didn't like something and they wanted to leave you happy. This is they really liked you and they tried to find a better place. That's good news. Congratulations.
That shares they're willing to be honest with you and hope that you'd reciprocate in kind.
Yeah, now that we've got that information, that means that they actually thought highly enough of you that even though this position wasn't available, they still wanted to waste their time to interview you. Because they thought that there might be something for you in the future. We don't have a lot of time to interview people. So the fact that they interviewed you knowing that that position was filled and told you that it was for possible future opportunities, that is one of those things that you put over in the let me follow up with them very quickly in the future pile. So, all right. So, I know there was a question that Mike wanted to get to before we wrap up. Let me find it here.
It's from Welsh Lad, because it's a pretty dangerous question in both cases, and I wouldn't hire either of the people. So Welsh Lad said, for a solution architect position, would you prefer an older engineer with years of experience who is now looking for a change of roles as he is getting into IT, or a younger person with certain lingo? Neither. So Welsh, I want to make it clear. If you've been a flight attendant for the last 50 years, you are not qualified to fly an airplane. And nobody hires anybody based upon certifications and lingo. They hire people based upon skills. If you've been an architect for the last an engineer for the last 50 years, you are not an architect. You're an engineer, and you're going to need training. See, we hire for architects people that have the job, have the skills. I've gotten everybody as young as 20-year-old Daniel Bosu, a cloud architect job, and I've gotten people that are 61 years old, like Robert Welch, cloud security architect jobs, and Sig Wolf in Germany, these big jobs. It has to do with your skills. But engineering does not prepare you for architecture, no more than being a flight attendant prepares you to be an airplane pilot. An architect focuses on how do you improve a business performance with technology, and an engineer focuses on technology. They're so different. And the example is the engineer is the construction crew. So when you want to hire someone to design a hotel or a 1,000-story tall skyscraper or a shopping mall, you hire an architect. Now there's a construction crew, which are engineers that build it, but nobody asked them to design it. So an employer wouldn't hire either one of these people. The engineer is training to be an architect, and I get people with 20 years engineering experience that we retrain to be architects because it's a different job. And yes, it's somewhat helpful to have the tech background, but I'm going to tell you right now, Welsh lad, somebody with a sales background like Al, my student, whose first solution architect job with no tech background, it was a senior solution architect job, is a lot easier to get hired than someone that's just a pure engineer without having a sales background. So the key is with the training, fine, we get engineers retrained to be architects all the time, but it has nothing to do with certifications. It has to do you have the skills for the actual job. And when people have a lot of engineering experience, I ask them a couple of architecture questions, and when they can't understand it, I tell them I don't want an engineer. In fact, Welsh lab, we have to remove a lot of engineering from people's jobs and translate engineering into architects, because, you know, when we speak to a CIO, when we speak to a hiring manager, when we speak to the VP of HR, when we speak to directors of cloud companies, they tell us we don't want an engineer, we want an architect for an architect job. Don't send us techies. We don't want hands-on techies, we want architects. So the key is it's about hiring the right person. It has nothing to do with their age. We get people hired of all backgrounds. Personally, more experience in life, the better. It's easier to get an architect job when you've got some gray hairs than when you don't. But then again, we've got people like Delroy Batt, who's 24, Daniel Bosu, who's 20, Vladimir, who's like 24, getting architect jobs every day with no background. And we've got 50 and 60-year-olds getting architect jobs with no background either, as long as they're properly trained. It's not the age, and it's not the experience. It's your ability to do the job. And unless you've been experienced as an architect, engineering experience doesn't count. It's a different career. It's like flight attendant experience versus an airplane pilot. Kind of important to know that, because people confuse the two careers and they're so very different.
All right. So it's time that we end the show, everybody. Trying to stick to our New Year's resolution of ending on time. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to hit the subscribe and notification bell so that you don't miss our next shows. I got a feeling we're going to be continuing to do some more of this, because we did not get through my whole list. This is 2 weeks, and we still have not gotten through my whole list. In case you're wondering how important interviewing is. So I do want to let everybody know, and hopefully Tyrone will help me here in the chat box, that I want to make sure that all of you get our interview guide. It's a free resource. Tyrone will be putting this over there in the chat box. You can find the link in the description as well. But this is for you, a free resource to get your feet wet on what you need to do to prepare for the interview. Also, make sure you join us for our free webinar on Friday, where we'll share secrets of how to win the interview. We'll also talk about our Tech Interview Mastery Program and how that can help you increase your potential earnings by $50,000 to $100,000 or more. Just depends on how well you utilize the resources we provide. That Tech Interview Mastery Program, I'll ask Tyrone to put that link there in the chat box as well, along with the 40% discount. That Tech Interview Mastery Program is a specially curated program, only 25 people eligible to enroll, so make sure you get that before they are gone. 25 slots. This program includes specially curated content, 5 small batch classes, especially for those 25 individuals. That will be roughly an hour to 2 hours each, depending on the content. It also includes one-on-one consultations with our team of experts, and also includes monthly group interview practice sessions. So make sure to take advantage of that discount to change your life. Interviewing can easily, a good interview can easily increase your salary by 50%, depending on the role. Even entry level tech roles, help desk, sysadmin, things like that. Even those types of roles, average salary, 65 to 75, $80,000. You can increase those by 10, 20, 25, $30,000 with good interviewing skills. So uh, higher paying roles, cloud architect, $200,000 on average. The cloud architect role usually has $200,000 to $250,000 range from the lowest paid to the highest paid. So you can imagine how much a good interview
Yeah.
can change that rate of pay and that total compensation package. So make sure to take advantage of all of those: the interview guide, the interview webinar, and if you're able to, and if you do it quickly enough before all the slots run out, take advantage of that discount for our Tech Interview Mastery program. Glad to have such an interactive session tonight. Great questions from everybody.
Yes.
Any last words, Mike or Alonso?
Well, I'm going to say if you have a chance to practice and get some interview training, get it. While we have that 40% off chance, don't waste this opportunity. I mean, don't waste it. I mean, for literally about the cost of one private session with me, which has an 18-week waiting list, you're getting this entire course plus private coaching from people, plus in classes, small batch, and it will change your life and it'll change your salary forever. Don't waste the opportunity. Don't to get all the training for your career and then not know how to package it and position yourself. I want you to view it this way. You are the Mercedes. And you got two Mercedes. They're two brand new GLE 350s. They're great cars. I can tell you exactly. They're very good cars. One has a beautiful paint job. One got scratched with a Brillo pad and looks really bad, and it was spray painted and graffiti. It's the same car. It's the same car. You go to the car dealership. Which one do you buy? The scratched up, scruffed up, rough around the edges looking one, or the brand new shiny one? They're both new. You buy the shiny one. Which is worth more? The shiny one. You ever buy a computer scratch and dent and get 30% off? Don't be the scratch and dent model. Be the beautifully packaged, polished up something. You know, when you go to one store to buy a suit, they give you champagne. While you're trying on your suits, you're drinking champagne. You go to the next store and it's there. The store that gives you the champagne charges you 20% more. Hey, maybe 30% more for the same thing. So I want you to be polished up. I want you getting 30, 40% more. When everybody's on that interview and they're saying you have no experience, I want you to be the person that not only gets hired, like one of my students who was a mental health tech that not only got an offer with no background, she negotiated a higher salary on top of it. Or I had a student who was 24 years old. He negotiated an additional $20,000 because he mastered our interview techniques on top of the job that 99% of the world would tell him he was unqualified for. I'll tell you right now, he was great and well qualified for the job because we trained him and he was great. But the point is he was packaged. He was prepared. Get your packaging right. Master your craft, but also master your packaging. If you're going to propose to your girlfriend, you know, you can do it at McDonald's, or you can take her to a nice restaurant, dress nice, get on your knees and use a nice diamond. You can do that. I promise you, one's going to yield better results than the other. The interview is a marriage proposal. You're proposing that someone brings you into their family. So class it up, get your interview training, and reap the rewards for the rest of your life. And have no fear. Don't let fear stop you. Be courageous and do what you need, but win. No matter what you do, win. How about you, Alonso?
Absolutely, Mike. We are always here to help you, and we are here to really propel you to your best career ever. And the first thing that requires is proper preparation so you can avoid the pervasive performance of not, practicing and getting things done. So we want to make sure we're here to help you. We would love for you to join us. If not, then definitely do your homework. Really prepare for your interview. This is life changing. And if you want your life to change, then you have to change along with it. So prepare. We'd love to have you as a client so we can help develop you and get your interview skills on a world-class level.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you on the webinar or in class. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone.